considered to maybe save some tires because I know we're going to see if we can let it on board with one of the drivers a little bit further back here tonight because once he dumps, there'll be a little bit of an indication that we should have tires on the road. He's a race number 6 come out, he will be quite a bit of tires. And
so now every one of these drivers has gone off their road and we have
It's going to be a blast, and my gosh, can we not wait for that one.
the line is very tricky to get down. So a lot of guys during practice trying to perfect that line, and like you said, you miss it by an inch, you ruin the rest of your lap and possibly the rest of your race. You don't want to have to start last. There'll be some guys we'll see might take that strategy, but if you or me, I'm not starting last in this.
I think I'm right there with you. I would not want to be further back. Now, to the viewers at home, you might notice some new Christmas tree colors up there, as our producer called them earlier up on the ticker. We've got green, yellow, and red. Now, the drivers in green are locked into the next round of the playoffs. The drivers in yellow are on the bubble, meaning they're engaged in a points battle, and they're not mathematically eliminated, so they have a chance to be eliminated, but they can progress on should they do well enough. And the drivers in red, well, they're out. They're not going to make the next round, so just keep that in mind as you look at the scoring and timing. Sorry, I apologize. Red has a chance, but yellow is the bubble. So that is how that is going to work. Now, the qualifying times have begun to roll in, and it looks like a low 45 is what we're seeing out of most of the front runners so far. One driver on the bubble is pretty much... Oh, nope, I apologize. We're still in practice. I was looking at the ticker there. But those will be the lap times that you're going to see in the race. Now, qualifying times, Jordan, they're going to be a little bit slower because you're gaining a lot of time in the draft. And these drivers during practice, of course, they've been working together, bump drafting, getting in tandem, and that really helps your lap time out. How much time would you say they're gaining using that draft?
Man, you see anywhere from 2 to 2.5 seconds you gain in the draft. It's a big difference. Single car speed. You're maxing out right around 180, 185, 190, whereas in the draft you're topping out at 201, 202 down the backstretch, sometimes even 205. So there's a big speed difference, and you can see it in the lap times.
Absolutely. So the qualifying times are going to be a little bit slower than what you see in the race, and we do now actually have drivers rolling off for qualifying. I do apologize again, but as you can see, some drivers working their way out. There's the driver, the number 51. Getting on the backstretch, and of course that outlap. I think the strategy here, Jordan, is going to be for your outlap, you want to ride the wall, be as far to the outside as you can, because that's the furthest distance around the track, meaning that gives you more space and more time to really build up your momentum and get more speed for your timed lap, at which point you probably want to dive right down onto that yellow line and hug it as close as you can.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the beginning of the season. I'm going to give away a couple of my speed secrets from the beginning of the season, because we actually had methodical lap come out of my head for once. But yeah, against the wall, out of the pit road, as soon as you cross that blue line on the backstretch, all the way around like we see Mark Cohen and I think Grant Brown was on our screen just a minute ago. Up against the wall, you want to be as close to that wall as you possibly can. Don't want to scrub any speed. You want to keep the wheel as straight as physically possible, especially as you head down into the backstretch. All the way into turns 3 and 4, you're going to be against the wall again. And then you're going to start. That's where you're going to start to see some drivers make some different moves coming to the white flag here. In the springtime, I was making a move right here in the center of 3 and 4 to cut down, get a little bit more speed going down the banking out of turn 4, and then do a little bit of a drift off of turn number 4 to move up just a little bit, and then hug the yellow line all the way around from there.
So these drivers definitely have a few options when it comes to what line to run, but most of them do involve running towards the wall, like you said, for quite some time. Of course, again, that's a bit of a risk. You don't want to risk scraping that wall. If you make any contact with it, that's going to take away all that added momentum that you would have from running the outside. So you're going to have to be careful of that as we finally have some lap times start to roll in. Now, of course, these out laps are going to be considerably slower than the driver's second laps. As it stands right now, Greg Evans in the number 2 has the fastest out lap, so he is currently sitting on the pole. Thomas George in the 88 sitting second. Our highest sitting driver currently that's on the bubble, that's going to be Grant Brown in the number 15. He's currently sitting P5, the 48.5. And right there you can see there's Eckert in the 45. He's one of the drivers in red, meaning he's got a chance, but he is currently on the outside looking in. So a lot of playoff risk, I would say, for some of these guys tonight. This is a plate track. It's a lot of pack racing. Some might say it's a bit of a lottery. You never know what's going to happen in these races. And you got to think it's pretty stressful for some of these guys that are on the bubble, and they really need to have a good night tonight. I mean, look at Evans, George, even Krobach. These guys are pretty much set on points. They've built themselves up a cushion, and they can afford to get wrecked out tonight and still make it on to the next round potentially. But some of these guys, they don't have that luxury. And how does that affect your driving style, Jordan? I mean, as a driver, knowing that this race can be so dangerous, but you have to get that good run, what do you do to try to secure yourself in a good position at the end of this thing?
There's so many different strategies that I've always tried, and not one of them seemed to work. talking to a couple of drivers. I talked to Grant Brown before qualifying got started here, and he's not even sure what he wants to do yet. I mean, he was honestly asking me what he thought what I would do, and I told him. I mean, he's one of those drivers that he can't, even a win isn't going to guarantee him in, because he had missed a race earlier this season. So he's got to go all out. He has no bonus points if he makes it on to the next round. So even if he makes it to the next round, he is going to start dead last with 2,000 points compared to the other drivers. And honestly, if you're on that bubble, you got to go for it. You got to put the momentum in your own hands.
I would have to agree with that for sure. And it looks like the number 2 has posted his secondary lap, and it was pretty much a 48 flat, and that is going to keep him on the pole for the time being. Right now, we've got 21 cars that have posted a lap, Blittel being the last of those, 49.5 for him. And, of course, a few more drivers making their way around the track, trying to get the best starting position. And, you mentioned earlier, Jordan, you don't want to start in the back. You want to be up front. Some of these drivers might have a different idea. I mean, whenever we go to these big, pack races, some drivers want to be out front ahead of the chaos, and some want to be far enough back that they can kind of see everything happening in front of them if there were to be a wreck, if there were to be an accident, and then avoid it later down the line. Now, we even have one driver who I noticed in the server chat there was saying that he had asked for an EOL so that he could start at the tail end of the field. Now, I think as well as I do, Jordan, when you're running in the back of these plate races like Daytona, Talladega, sometimes even a track like Michigan, you have to stay close enough that you're in the draft. And if you lose that draft, it's only going to be a matter of a few laps before you find yourself going a lap down, because you're simply losing too much speed that everybody else has working together. So they're kind of walking a fine line where they got to be far enough back they give themselves time to react, if that's the strategy that they're going with. But they got to stay at least close enough to stay in the draft. So would you say that's the harder strategy than just trying to go up front, or is it more difficult to battle for the lead and try to get away from the chaos in that way?
I've always found the falling to the back is the harder strategy. Like you said, you got to stay with the draft. You got to keep that bubble close enough that if something happens, you can get away. But at the same time, you don't want to fall back 3, 4, 5, even 10 seconds, because your night's over at that point. You're praying for a caution. You're praying for something to happen that catches you back up, because once you get that far, it doesn't matter how many cars you put in a line, doesn't matter how much help you have, you're not going to get back up there. We saw that at the beginning of the season in Daytona. Two packs formed, and you just cannot catch up no matter how well you work together. So it's a really fine line. That's why I've always found going to the front, trying to stay out of trouble up front, give plenty of room early on. I've always found the top line, if you can get up front, stay on the top, usually you can kind of control the momentum, because you're giving the bottom running the room. If you decide you want to pinch them, that's on you. But you can give the room, and you can make the race go green if you would like it.
Absolutely. Now, we have 3.5 minutes left, roughly, of qualifying time. And as the viewers at home might have noticed on our 3Wide TV scoring ticker, we got a new pole sitter. Greg Evans has been dethroned, actually twice over. Craig Stykes passed him with a 48.012, so that was 0.02 of a second quicker. But then Johnny Avila came along and said, well, forget the 48-second lap times. I'm going to be the lone wolf in the 47-second bracket. He ran a 47.9, the only driver so far to break beneath a 48-second lap. Incredible qualifying effort by that 63. And right now, it's looking like it's going to be hard to dethrone him. I mean, time is running out. I think looking at this scoring pylon, there's only a few drivers that have yet to turn a lap. I'm seeing names such as Gordon Digby, Brian Yazik, Tim Knott, Jamie Moore, Jeff Ward, Scott Eckrich. It's a little surprising to me that Scott Eckrich hasn't posted a qualifying time. I got to wonder if maybe he's one of those drivers who wants to be in the back. Now, you know the drivers in this league a little bit better than I do, Jordan. Is that kind of Scott's MO here at these Daytona, Talladega type tracks? He just wants to be towards the back?
I would say that's probably a yes. I think I saw Scott talking earlier in the practice that super speedway racing is one of his least favorite things to do, just because it's so wide open, and there is skill involved, but at the same time, it's not the normal skill you'd use at a normal track, like Atlanta or a track like that. So I'd say Scott is definitely aiming towards the back, and maybe not necessarily excited for this race.
Yeah, it's one of those things. These plate races are very divisive amongst drivers and fans alike. And I think that kind of comes from just how much stock car racing as a whole has changed. I mean, back in the day when this track was built, it wasn't wide open. Those cars that they were driving, they could go 250 miles an hour, and they had all the grip of an ice rink. They could not sail it into these corners wide open. So there was a lot more throttle control, a lot more risk involved, and it was a lot more difficult and a lot more engaging, I would say, for some of these drivers. And then as time went on, the cars got a little slower. They got more downforce, and of course, they went wide open, and that kind of changed the skill set. Like you said, there is skill involved, but it's not what you normally use. At a normal stock car oval race, the skill set involves how well can you apply the braking, how well do you know the track, what line can you follow, and how closely can you hit your marks. How early can you get on the throttle, what kind of car control do you have. At a plate track like this, it's kind of more of an awareness test, right? You have to be aware of everything around you. You have to know what cars are behind you, what cars are in front of you, what cars are next to you. And you have to keep your eyes and ears peeled at all times, because it's just one of those places where, it can hit the fan at any minute, right? Any second, any minute, and you have zero time to react. So you have to be really aware, not just of avoiding other cars, but also opportunities. If you're going to make passes here, if you're somebody who's starting in the back and you want to get up front, there are going to be times where the cars in front of you open that door just a little bit. They slide up half a lane, and you might be able to stick your nose in, but that door is only going to be open for a split second. And if you miss that opportunity, you're going to be stuck riding around in the line that you're in the lane that you're in. And that's pretty much going to be all she wrote. So a lot of awareness involved in this type of racing. And it's also a bit of an endurance. I mean, I think it's easy sometimes when you're riding wide open, Jordan, to kind of let your mind fade out. You start to get a little bit daydreamy, you could say. You're not really focused because you've just been wide open. You're holding the wheel left and then going back straight. You're doing it over and over, and you start to get a bit of mental fatigue. And that's when the accidents set in. That's when you start to make mistakes. And this is just a track, like many of them, where you can't make those mistakes. And unlike some of the other tracks, if you do make a mistake here, there is almost a guaranteed possibility that somebody else is going to be caught up in your mistake. There's very few single car incidents that you ever see at a track like this. And that can be a whole challenge in and of itself. You don't want to get your fellow competitors involved in an incident. You don't want to be that guy that kicked off the big one. So they got to be focused, and they have to have a bit of an endurance, I would say. But Jordan, we got the qualifying complete. So let's go ahead and go through our final qualifying standings. I'll go ahead and take 1 through 10 as per usual. The front row, Johnny Avila in that number 63, and Craig Stykes in the 57. It's going to be rolling out alongside of him. And yes, nobody was able to dethrone Johnny Avila's 47.9. He was still the only driver at the end of that to break into that 47-second bracket. Greg Evans and Todd Kirkwood are going to make up row 2. Thomas George and Will Worsler making up row 3. Behind them, you got Tyler Seville and Michael Larch. And rounding out your top 10 is going to be Michael Krobach and Alan Young, who's on the points bubble.
Drew Carroll and Corey Benton will start 11th and 12th. Kevin Stone, 13th. John Eckert, another one of our playoff bubble drivers, in 14th. Mark Kahn, good to see him back in starting 15th. Troy Haight, 16th. Woody Mahan will start 17th. Grant Brown, one of our playoff drivers as well, starting 18th. Mark Myers will start 19th. And Adam Jersky will start 20th.
And looking back from 20th, we got that number 39, Pete Baskins, who the viewers might remember last week had a pretty good run going. It seems like Pete found something in that 39 machine, and we're looking forward to seeing what he can do. Alongside him, you have Richard Fletcher, who was another surprise standout last week. Richard had a great run in that 43 last week. And then behind them, the next row, you got Adam Littell and AJ Digby, the only Twitter-verified driver in the league. We were going to get that mentioned. We wanted that mentioned, so we got that out there. We have a Twitter-verified driver in the league. Yeah, try not to get jealous. Scott Eckert in the number 70 and Brian Gosling behind him. Jeff Ward and Tim Knott. And then rounding out the field, 29th to 30th, Jamie Moore and Gordon Digby. Now, I should note, we've had an unfortunate disconnect. Troy Haight has fallen out of the server due to connectivity issues. He has reconnected, but I'm not sure if he's going to be able to load in and get caught up to the field in time without going a lap down. So we're going to keep an eye on that as we make this fairly quick pace lap. Coming off of the tracks that we've been at, we've had some pretty long pace laps. This time, we're just going to be going down the backstretch, lap 4, and we are out and away for this event. And what do you think the strategy is going to be for the starting corner? Are you going to try to maybe fall back intentionally so that you can be pushed by the car behind, or are you going to try to jump out as far as you can get on this start?
It's really hard to say. I mean, we see already a couple drivers ask for an EOL. Greg Evans dropped to the back. Todd Kirkwood dropped to the back. Drew Carroll already dropped to the back. the multiple cars already asked to go to the back to get out of the Hornet's nest, and to me that's still kind of surprising. I mean, Greg has nothing to lose; he's safely in the points. Todd Kirkwood hasn't made many starts recently, so props to him for falling to the back, not trying to mess anything up. Drew Carroll has nothing to lose. I mean, he can't get into the points, so props to these guys for maybe thinking that they might not have something right off the bat. They don't want to be the cause of a big one.
Absolutely, and the pace truck's going to make that hard left turn down into pit lane, and Johnny Avila's going to see that green flag dropping in front of him, and away they go, side by side, door to door across the stripe. Nobody gets the advantage on either lane, although the number 88 Thomas George getting a good run on that bottom lane, trying to push that 63, and they are going to remain that way as the 63 now dives up high. He's going to try to give the draft to the number 57, who is in turn being pushed by the 29, Will Wurzler, who, look at that, Will Wurzler, he jumped up quite a few positions on that start there.
Yeah, he did. I think after all the EOLs, he ended up starting 4th, which worked out great for him because it put him right beside the 57, who latecomer to the league later on this season, but has been a teammate to Will Wurzler last season, and it looks like they formed an alliance with the 63 as well. So you got basically an entire team running the top 3 right now, and that's exactly what you want to see if you're them.
Absolutely. Teamwork makes the dream work. I know that's a cliche saying, but I would say there's no better way to put how this track works. I mean, you have to have that teamwork. You got to be getting that push from somebody behind you. Otherwise, you're just going nowhere. And that's a huge advantage that Will Wurzler Racing is going to have tonight. You know, having not only their team, but the satellite team that is affiliated with them, they're going to work together for the majority of this race. Now, that being said, I think any and all alliances kind of dissipate into the ether once we hit about lap 75. We hit lap 75, that checkered flag gets closer. I don't think anybody's friends anymore at that point. Everybody's trying to get that trophy for themselves. But for the time being, those teammates and that alliance is going to be a huge help. So that is going to be a big thing for them to stay up front, as we are still double file throughout some of the pack here. And got one driver, I believe that is the number 28, Troy Haight, who disconnected earlier in the session. I don't think he is 2 laps down, unfortunately, according to our scoring and timing. So he's going to need, nothing short of a miracle, I would say. A couple cautions, assuming that nobody else goes a lap down. But right now, Johnny Avila keeping the lead. Craig Stykes right behind him, and Will Wurzler there in 3rd. The boss man trying to push him around the track. And back there in 5th, again, that's number 24, Young. He is on the playoff bubble, but having a good points night so far. But it's really hard to say that any of this counts right now. You know what I mean, Jordan? I mean, this is so early into the event. And again, these tracks are so hectic, so chaotic. You never really know what's going to happen down the line.
No, you don't. This is honestly what the playoff bubble guys want to see. They want to see a single file train on the bottom for as long as possible. It ensures them they can get as long into the race as possible. Mistakes really can't be made when you're like this, and if they are made, you can minimize them very easily. You don't see very many cars bumper to bumper. Plenty of space in between everybody. If I'm Grant Brown, if I'm John Ecker, if I'm Alan Young, even Troy Haight, this is what I want to see right now. Obviously, Troy Haight wants to see a caution very quickly so he can get one of his laps back, but at the same time, you don't want to see multiple wrecks that are going to knock you out.
Absolutely. Now, talking about fuel mileage here, I want to get into this conversation. According to AJ Digby, who's kind of our, I would say he's our researcher. He's the guy that gives us all the data and what if we podcast. He was telling us that they're going to get about 37 to 39 laps of fuel, which is, of course, 1 lap short of getting to halfway. They have to be lap 40 to get to halfway, and that would be the only way for them to make the one-stop strategy. And he said he does not foresee a one-stop race unless we get a caution before that lap 40 mark. So it's going to have to be a 2-stop, and more than likely, I would say, if they stay single file like this, which I kind of assume. I mean, we were talking a little bit about this pre-race, but we kind of assumed that things were going to be kind of calm for the early stages of this event. So I'm going to bet that we're going to have a green flag stop, and that is a whole nother challenge at these tracks, Jordan. I mean, you have to pit not only in a pack, because you have to, you got to pit with somebody. If you pit on your own and you come out on your own, you've lost the draft. You're putting yourself at a disadvantage. Anybody who pitted with a crowd and then left with a crowd so they can immediately start drafting again, they've got the advantage. So you have to pit with other people, which puts you in close proximity. But you've also got a pit road on this track in particular that kind of invites speeding. I mean, you have such a huge run-up to to this pit road, and it's so smooth and so fast. I think every driver is going to try to get the best of one another. If you can pass a guy and jump ahead of him right before you get into the pits, well, that's one track position on track. So you got to try to take that. But you take it too far, you might find yourself sliding through those speeding loops that try to kind of keep track of how fast you're going. So I would say green flag pit stops are going to be a bit of a challenge for these guys.
I cannot wait for green flag pit stops. That's one of my favorite things about running super speedways is trying to play the game on how you're going to get on the pit road, like you're talking about. You want to get the one up on the guy you're going in with. A lot of times you're going to pit with a teammate, you're going to pit with a friend. So you want to try to one up them. You want to try to make them look foolish going on the pit road. At the same time, you're going to make yourself look foolish if you do something silly. I mean, I've seen multiple drivers slide off into the grass, run into the back of somebody. You get loose because of wheel hop, and chaos can ensue going on the pit road. I can't wait for it. It's one of my favorite parts about super speedway racing.
It's definitely going to be fun, and it adds a crazy element of strategy and I would say tactics to the race. Also, as our producer Carlos said in the chat there of the live stream, there was a timing and scoring error. Troy Haight is on the lead line. He's by himself. He is coming close to going one lap down. I had wondered about that. I thought, man, like when he got on the track, I wasn't even sure we were on the track for 2 laps. So I was like, that doesn't seem right, but I'm going to go with the scoring and timing. He is on the lead lap as it's saying. And if we were to get a caution, that would be his saving grace. He'd be right back in it, which is pretty lucky considering it's not often you see somebody lag out of the session, they have an internet issue, and they're able to join back in time that they don't go a lap down while everybody else is pacing. So quite lucky there. Hopefully he gets the break that he needs. You hate to see anything happen to take somebody out of a race so early on. But speaking of something happening to take somebody out of a race early on, I'm looking a little bit further back in the pack, looking at Scott Eckrich. He was the driver who was taken out of the last event last week very early on. Very disappointing day for that number 70 team. And you were kind of surprised that he took the tail end of the field there, and I'm right there with you. I'm a little surprised as well. Seems to be working out for him. They're single file back there. They still got the draft. He kind of seems pretty safe for right now. I think a lot of these guys in the back, they're planning on the big one, right? Like they think it's going to happen, and they probably think it's going to happen soon, and that's why they're riding back here. But we'll have to see if it works out for him. Either way, right now, he's having a pretty good day, clean car. You're going to have to see what he can do. And I would say, if we don't see a big one, I got to ask this question, Gordon. If we don't see a big one, at what point do these guys riding around the back start to navigate up through the field? When do they start trying to make moves and start realizing, well, we're not going to get the caution, we're not going to get the wreck, I'm going to have to get up there on the green? When is go time?
Man, that's the chess game you got to play, because you could cause the big one by going too early, and you could easily cause the big one by going too late. You got to try to find that happy medium. I'm going to say 15 to go is time to start really thinking about, all right, we need to get into the front. We're in the spot that Scott's in right now. 15 to go definitely is the spot that I'm thinking. All right, go time. Let's get to the front. Let's see what we can make happen. This drafting package we have now, I know we touched on it a little bit, nowhere near what these guys are used to. I think this is only their second, maybe third time with this current drafting package, and it is like nothing else. It is a completely different animal than what we've had on iRacing since day one.
And explain for the viewers at home, how different is this package? I mean, back when this car was first introduced, when we got the big spoilers and the tapered spacers, we got pretty big runs. I think bigger runs than anybody was expecting in the draft. But it seems like this package came along and just amplified it. Yeah,
before you could easily run up on someone from 2/10 back and end up 2/10 in front of them going up the back straightaway. Now, as long as you get someone on your back bumper, you can march from 2-3 cars back, and you can get 4 or 5 spots. But at the same time, if someone gets on your quarter panel, you're going backwards. So it's a insane chess game. I remember, I think I was part of the first race still running in this league when the draft package came out at Talladega, and we were all we spent hours trying to figure it out. And even come race time, we couldn't figure it out. It was chaotic, but it was fun, and it's something different.
And you mentioned the side draft, which is a hugely important thing that we're not really seeing early on in the race because it's kind of a risky move, and there's no need to be doing that so early on in the event. But I can guarantee you, we're going to see a lot of side drafting as the laps wind down and as we get closer to that checkered flag. And I would say that the side draft is a huge liability here. Yes, you can stop somebody from marching through the field, like you said. You can basically deploy the parachute on the back of their car and stop any and all progress they might be making. Now, that being said, if you accidentally make contact, which you don't actually need to make contact. As far as iRacing is concerned, sometimes there's a little bit of netcode. The cars don't actually make physical contact on anybody's screen, but the game says, well, I think as far as the netcode side of things goes, there was contact here. That car goes careening. And how hard is it to save a car here when you get sideways, Jordan? I mean, it seems like it's nearly impossible because the steering wheel, when you're racing with force feedback at a track like this, the steering wheel is floating as it is. You have no feedback, no weight in the wheel. And when your car gets sideways, it amplifies that even more.
Absolutely, it does. I mean, there's no feeling to describe it to anyone at home that hasn't done this before. The car gets so loose and you're just aiming for the wall, especially if you go right. If you go left, you have a little bit more of a chance because you do have runoff, you do have grass. But if you get turned to the right, you have no time to react by the time you're in the wall, and there's your big one.
Absolutely. Now for the viewers at home, here's another question. How does the grass affect these cars in real life? Obviously, if the driver were to slide through the grass, that's going to tear off their splitter. That's going to tear off pretty much the front end of their car entirely. But on the simulator, it might be a little bit different. I would say the grass is a little bit more survivable, is it not?
Much more survivable. You can drive through the grass for the most part, as long as there is a little bit of a dig-in factor. It doesn't tear the splitter off, but it can send the car flying through the air, and it will buckle the nose in a little bit, and that will give you a little bit of drag. But for the most part, you can get through the grass, you can slide through the grass, and come out of it okay and continue on.
Absolutely. So they will have a bit of a chance if that's the direction they spin, but that's a big if. And we do have Troy Haight going a lap down there, finally. And that took him about 15 laps to get lapped, which is a little bit longer than I would have assumed. I mean, he came out pretty much as soon as they went green, but it's taken him 15 laps to go this one lap down. So honestly, not bad pace out of the 28. He is falling back now, obviously, because he was on his own, but he's able to slot in with the pack now, and he should be able to stay with them. And assuming that nobody else goes a lap down and we maybe get a caution, that's going to put him in as the lucky dog. So that's kind of a lucky save for the 28. Hopefully, he, like I said earlier, he gets that break. But I'm just really surprised that it took him 15 laps to get put one lap down. Usually it happens a little bit quicker.
Yeah, usually it does. I think he got the luckiest break he could have got out of that. He popped back into the server, I believe, just before they went green, and it was able to roll out just as they were coming across the line. They weren't fully wound up yet, so he got a lot of time and a lot of space. I look at the scoring ticker, though. I'm a little confused. I think the 63 might have dropped out.
You are correct. Looking at the scoring and timing, something has happened. And I'm going to look at... Hold on 1 minute. Looking at the chat, I don't see anything about him being disconnected due to packet loss, which is what the server would tell us if he disconnected due to internet issues. So that tells me one of two things. Oh, nope, there we go. Johnny Avila, the server disconnected due to incoming packet loss. Wow. The number 63, the leader of the race, taken out of this event by internet issues. And that's rare. We don't normally see that out of the 63, Jordan. I mean, I don't think I've ever even seen him blink, let alone disconnect from the session.
No, I've never seen him blink. Never once, actually. All the times that he's been here since week 5, I believe. Never blinked, never anything. So obviously something awry on the computer of the 63, which is really disappointing to see because he's had a really good season as a producer. Carlos just told us he is locked in, so he does still have a chance at the playoffs, but really disappointed to see him fall out of this race.
Yeah, and he's not going to be able to build up any more of a cushion, which, you know, instead of building that cushion up, now he's kind of using that cushion to make sure he gets into the next round. That's very unfortunate. But that is going to kind of hand the lead to Craig Stykes in that 57, who is being pushed by Will Wurzler and Michael Larch behind him in that number 3, as well as Alan Young, who's moved his way up to 4th. He was 5th a couple laps ago. He made a pass, got around the number 45, John Eckert, so that put him up in the top 4, just outside the podium looking in. And right now, I think these leaders are pretty content. I think this is what these drivers want to see. Just like you said earlier, Jordan, it's not just the playoff drivers that want to see this. I think every driver wants this calm, single-file racing because, you know, you come to these tracks and you know the first thing on your mind is, well, there's going to be a big wreck and there's a chance I'm going to be in it. And then that could completely ruin my points day. That could ruin my night. All the practice that I put in could be for nothing. You want to make sure that this race goes as clean and as safe as possible. And who knows? I do believe the caution-free bounty is still a thing. So, you know, that's another thing on their mind, I'm sure. If we could actually get through a plate race caution-free, that would be Nothing short of impressive. But everybody pretty calm right now, and this is what they want. You know, they want to make sure that this stays green and that they all have a chance at the end of this thing.
Yeah, nothing's more disappointing than lap 20 at Talladega, Daytona, and you're knocked out because someone made a move, or you even made a move that you want to kick them in the back of the head for. And I've been there, made that move before. I've been part of that move, it being made, and it's gut-wrenching. Because these guys do put so much practice into these events. There's multiple guys that spend 2, 3, 4 hours just preparing for this event, and for it to go awry on lap 20, it's harder than most races, honestly.
And speaking of making moves, fans at home might have saw it in the right-hand corner of their screen last time around as they rounded 3 and 4, where they're headed on track right now. Grant Brown threw quite a block on Adam Jersky. He went from up high down low, and Jersky had to get on the brakes there a little bit, or at least lift to make sure that there was no contact made. Now, Grant Brown, of course, is a driver who's on the bubble, and I think that's what we're going to see all night long. These drivers who are good in points, they got no reason to be aggressive. They got no reason to go out here and make moves. They want to ride. They want this to go green. And yes, the bubble drivers want it to go green as well, but you also have more of a motivation, more of a reason to be a little bit more aggressive, to throw those blocks, to keep your track position, to make sure that nobody can get around you, and that when an opportunity to make a pass arises, you're there to strike. And I think that's what we're going to see out of drivers like Grant Brown, Alan Young, a few of these other drivers that are on the bubble or even on the outside looking in, such as Eckert, who, I haven't really talked about him much tonight, but driver that number 45, he's on the outside looking in, currently in 5th. He's going to need a really good night tonight to move on, and he's putting himself in position. But I would say if he wants that win, if he wants to really cement himself as moving forward in the playoffs, he's got to be aggressive. He can't just ride around.
No, he can't. He's 13 points behind the cut line. He's got to do everything he can to make as many points up as possible. I mean, right now, just looking at the cheat sheet that I was given this morning, Grant Brown's 18 points over the cut line, so Grant's got a little bit of a cushion. He can have a little bit of leeway. Alan Young, he's 8 points over the cushion. That's 8 points over Troy Haight, which obviously right now that's grown quite a bit since Troy Haight is currently 1 lap down, running in 29th, and Alan Young's running 4th. John Eckert's the one that he's got the most to gain. He's the one that I'm going to watch tonight. There's a real possibility he could get in tonight, and if he does, it's going to be an awesome show to watch.
And you got to wonder what's going through his mind, because he's running 5th. John Eckert is in 5th, and the car in front of him, that bumper that's taken up his entire windshield, well, that's his points competitor. That's Alan Young, who's ahead of him in points by a little bit. So does that play into his mentality? Does he see that number 24 and think, I can't let this guy be in front of me too long. When I get the chance, I got to get around him. And I got to make sure that I'm the one that's in front and I'm the one that's safe. And when everything goes down in the middle of the pack, when they start to kick off the big one, whenever that happens, if it happens, he's the one that's back there in the fray, right? And to make that happen, like we said, you got to be aggressive. You got to get around him. You can't just ride on his bumper. So I'm curious to see what Eckert does. I think right now he's pretty content. I think he's just kind of riding. If I was a betting man, I would say right after the first sequence of green flag stops, should we get there, that's when things are going to get intense. The drivers are going to know that the laps are winding down. They've done their time riding around being calm, and that patience is going to start to wear thin around about that time. And that's when we're going to see a lot more aggression, especially out of drivers like Brown, like Eckert, like Young, who really have to have these good nights. I mean, especially when you look at the car ahead of you, Will Worsler, right? Eckert and Young are both looking at Worsler, who's locked into the next round. They know he doesn't have to have a good night. And that's another thing, Jordan. I mean, do these drivers get a little bit more aggressive with the drivers who are locked in? Because, hey, if I make a move and things go sideways, well, they're good anyways. Nothing bad can happen to them.
Absolutely. I mean, we've run, I can't remember how many weeks we're in now. We're 25, 26 weeks into the season at this point. There's been rivalries made. There's some bad blood between some of these drivers, and some of them are already locked in. Some of them have only been here a couple weeks. I know Grant Brown and Adam Jersky had an issue at, I believe it was New Hampshire back a couple weeks ago, and Thomas George and Drew Carroll the last couple weeks have not been the most friendly to each other as well. So there's multiple drivers out here that have built a rivalry with another driver, and that's going to play into it as well. That driver you're not going to get any room from. You're probably not going to give them any room. And at the same token, they have friends, and they're probably not going to give you any room back either.
And here's an interesting development. Grant Brown is currently 3 wide on the outside, letting the field go by. because he blinked out, and it was not a small blink, Jordan. He was gone for half a lap. He was actually the car I was following, and my audio cut out. That's why I switched over to see what was going on, and it was a solid 20 seconds that he was gone, which does equate to nearly half a lap. So he's letting everybody go by. Obviously, that's kind of the move that you make. If you're told that you're blinking, that's kind of the respectful thing to do, is to say, all right, well, nobody can really tell where my car is. I'm kind of a danger out here to these guys. I'm going to let them go, fall back, and then if my internet gets stable again, I'm going to start making moves. But until then, we just got to ride. That's what Grant Brown did, and he just lost a lot of positions. So for a driver that's on the bubble, giving up those positions, that can't be easy.
No, it can't be easy at all. And if I know Sam up on the race control the way I know Sam, I'm assuming he probably told Grant he needed to fall to the back to clear up his connection. Fortunately for Grant, it does happen more often than not for some drivers. I have noticed recently it's been a little bit better, but a 20-second blink at Daytona, not something you want to see and not something your competitors want to see, because you can't see them, and when you decide to come back in, your car becomes solid very quickly, and there's a wreck that didn't need to happen.
Yeah, I have seen cars that have disappeared, and then they kind of rematerialize inside of the competition. And that causes many issues. Sometimes it causes a wreck. Sometimes it causes the simulation to kind of bug out and not really know what to do with the physics, because there's two cars kind of intermingling, which is not supposed to happen. So very good play by the race control. This league does have, I would say, some of the best race control there is. I mean, these guys, nobody in this league messes around. The drivers don't mess around. The race control don't mess around. The admins don't mess around. You know, everybody takes this very seriously. Everybody handles this with a lot of respect, and that's one of the better things about this league for sure. I mean, there's a lot of good things, but that is a really amazing attribute to have. I mean, when you have a league like this, you want to have solid leadership, and you don't want to have rules that are kind of enforced intermittently or by judgment calls. The rule should be the rule, and like you said, generally, more often than not, if you're having a big enough blink, the race control is going to come across and say, hey, it's going to be tough, I know, but you got to let him go. You got to fall back, and that's the best thing for the competition. If you can avoid any incidents like that, especially at this stage in the playoffs, that is definitely the way to go.
Absolutely. Sam and I have many conversations throughout the week about just that. We want to rule with an iron fist, but we also want to look out for what's best for the league. And that is one of the rules that has been around for quite a while. And Sam and I agree that that's one of the ones we will forever keep. We consider it a 30-60-90 rule on blinks. Sometimes some tracks it's a little bit less, some tracks it's a little bit more. But we also use our discretion of, in a situation like that, where if you blink out for 20 seconds, it might have been one solid blink, but it was 20 seconds. It's time to go to the back and get that clear up. Because we can't have that happening multiple times, and we don't know when it's going to happen. It's just like your internet at home when it randomly disconnects. Same thing for these guys, because they're all at home. It can go random at any point in time. A thunderstorm like I have going on outside my house could knock me out at any second. Hopefully it doesn't, knock on wood. But that's what these guys are dealing with.
Absolutely, and you make a good point. You're talking about that thunderstorm. I mean, a lot of the East Coast right now has been facing a lot of storms over the last week, pretty much from all the way up north, all the way down south. We've had a lot of thunderstorms across the East Coast, and a lot of internet issues. In other leagues, I've seen drivers have issues, talking about the power getting knocked out, the internet getting knocked out. And it's always a little bit unnerving, you know, when you're in this race, you're in an event, or in your case, in my case, we're commentating an event, and you've got this storm going on outside, and you never know what's going to happen. You know, your power might get knocked out, your internet might drop, and if you're a driver, well, your internet dropping, again, that can be a liability to the drivers around you, which you certainly don't want. So it's rough, but the show goes on, and you got to show up, you got to try to do what you can, and that's what these drivers are doing. Grant Brown, luckily, able to kind of blend into the field. He didn't lose too much time. And now he's just running single file. I think he kind of accepts his track position right now. He's like, well, we're getting close to green flag stops anyways. There's no point in really being aggressive, because you make a lot of moves right now, and then everybody's just going to pull off into pit road, and it was kind of pointless anyway. So I would say it's the safest move for Grant Brown and these drivers. Just kind of ride around, wait out these green flag stops, and that's when we're going to see a lot of fun. I agree with you there, Jordan. These green flag stops that we're probably 7 or 8 laps away from, that is going to be a blast to watch, because they're going to be barreling down into the pit road as fast as they can, trying to get every advantage they can. And again, they got to come in together. They got to be bumper to bumper. Otherwise, they're going to lose the draft coming out of the pits, which is something that you just don't see at too many tracks. So lot of tactics when it comes to pitting, and of course teamwork. Certain teams are going to be coordinating when they're going to pit, and sometimes, Jordan, the opposite of teamwork. Some teams might try to kind of, I would say, wait till the last minute. Not tell the entire competition, oh yeah, we're pitting right now, because they don't want them coming with them. So they're going to try to say, hey, we're going to wait until the last possible second, say we're pitting, and then dive down. And that can be a little chaotic. I've seen that a lot at these tracks.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that as well. You coming off a turn 4, and all of a sudden the person in front of you says, oh, hey, by the way, I'm pitting. And you're locked onto their bumper, and they go flying off in the infield. They get mad at you. They're like, hey, I said I was pitting. It's like, well, if you would have given me more than 0.2 seconds, I probably wouldn't have turned you to the infield. Not speaking from experience there by any stretch of the imagination, but definitely, you definitely want to give them a little bit more than turn 4. Usually turn 3 is where I'm going to try to start saying, hey, I'm pitting, so I can give that guy behind me a little bit of time to start thinking about it, but not enough time to think about, hey, I'm going to come with you. They might not have their pit stop set up yet.
Absolutely. Now, Jordan, what is the experience like exiting the pits? Obviously, you have to merge on the backstretch, which means when you leave the pits, we do have a bunch of cars coming down pit road. When these guys exit the pits, whoa, the 39 goes around into the inside wall. That is a tough break. Oh, no. We go to our 3YTV multicam bottom screen. There's the current action on pit road. Top is the drivers who are still on track. But Jordan, how easy is it to do what we just saw with that 39? I mean, locking up the brakes, getting sideways. How easy is that?
That's easier than a hot knife through butter right there. That's out of control all the way onto pit road. Tires are chirping. You're trying to hold on to it the best you can. You're trying to get it down to, I believe it's 60 miles an hour on pit road here. And if you realize you're going a little bit too fast, you might put a little bit more brake into it. You put a little bit more brake into it, around you go. As we see these guys coming off of pit road right now. Like you mentioned, coming off of pit road, it's just as tricky. You want to get wound up as fast as you possibly can. And at the same time, you can't cross the double yellow line. If you cross the double yellow line, you're going to get a penalty. You're going to have to go back down pit road. Then your night's basically over. So as we see these guys coming through right now, holding on to below the yellow line, you got to try to be wide open. If you're not wide open, you're losing speed. If you're losing speed, you're losing time, and it negates what you just tried to do on pit road.
And it's tough because there's no grip down on that apron. I mean, you have to be wide open. But it's so easy to get a little bit sideways or even slide up and put 2 tires above that double yellow. And that's all it takes. You put 2 tires up there, and the simulator's going to say, that's a penalty. You did not exit safely. You got to come back down pit road. So they got to be wide open, but they got to do it with a lot of finesse. And they got to be real careful about it as some of these drivers are finally beginning to re-merge. And that was a pretty early stop for some of those guys. I think it's probably going to be another 3 laps or so. Maybe 2 laps or so before we see this next pack come down pit road. What is the advantage or disadvantage of a short stop here? I mean, at a traditional track, the advantage of a short stop is that, well, you got fresher tires, you got it quicker, so now you're turning faster laps than everybody who's staying out. And then, of course, later on it evens out, and the drivers who pitted later, they've got the fresher tires later in the race. But at a plate track where tires don't matter, is when you pit really just a matter of personal preference?
Personal preference is a big thing on it, but at the same time, you want to try to get, as we see the leaders hitting pit road right now as well, you want to get formed up as quickly as you possibly can. The quicker you get reformed back up, the quicker you're back up to top speed. Where you see these guys pitting right now, where the guys that pitted before are out there with them already, they might come out behind them. So it's a good chance to leapfrog because you can get formed up, you can get back with the lead pack, and maybe gain a couple tenths on them.
That's a good point. Now, Michael Larch, John Eckert, and of course Stone, they have not yet pit, so they're going to be really some of the last stragglers alongside Tyler Seville in the number 11. Adam Dursky, I believe, also has not come down pit road. Also Greg Evans. So these drivers staying out a little bit longer, just trying to stay out under green, work together with the draft, and then come down when they will. But I don't think we're really going to see any of these guys even attempt the one stop. I think AJ was right when he told us there in the pre-race chat that nobody was really going to go for that one stop, barring a caution, and we didn't get that caution. So it's going to be another green flag stop likely that these drivers are going to have to face. And all the chaos we just saw, the 39 car spinning down pit road, the drivers locking up the brakes and trying to best each other in and try to hold it wide open on exit, we're going to have to do that all over again. And these drivers are going to have to face the music for that again.
I got my popcorn ready. I can't wait. Circling back real quick, I just thought of one more thing. Pitting early is also can be dangerous. Happened to me about 3 weeks in a row early on in the season when I was still running. Try to pit early, try to get those fresh tires. Like you said, it doesn't matter here at Daytona, but even at other tracks, we see more cars heading down pit road. Here on my screen at the moment, I can't tell who it is exactly, but looks like the rest of the Will Warsaw Racing team. Try to say that 10 times fast. Going down pit road, and Mark Myers as well. But as I was saying, you could get caught on pit road where the caution comes out, and that can cost you a lap because you get stuck there, and the field comes around, and you're nothing you can do. You're sitting there watching them. You're just like, oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, you can kind of split the field in half. If half the field has come down pit road, they've gone a lap down, and then a caution comes out. You pretty much have to either take the waiver round or you have to hope for a caution, and it can definitely trap you. We see the tires being locked up there, but the leaders are making their way down pit road. I believe this is pretty much the rest of the drivers. This is gonna be pretty much the final set of drivers who had yet to pit as they make their way down too wide into the pits. Scary thing trying to enter the pits with your tires locked up too wide, but everybody's seeming to do a pretty good job. Tyler Seville at a very large angle in his pit stall. I am surprised that counts. I would almost think they would tell him to reposition that car, but hey, he's got 4 tires in the stall and he's far enough away from the wall, so I guess it works.
It definitely worked because he rolled out first off the pit road as well. So that weird angle he took worked out for the best for him because he got out on pit road first. We see this new lead pack coming around through turns 1 and 2. Let's see where these guys blend in, see how close behind they can fall in.
Yeah, gonna have to see exactly where everything shakes out. The running order is not gonna be what we saw before that pit sequence for sure. A lot of change up going on here. And right now, strolling through the field, our current leader is being scored as Michael Large. That was the last time around, though. Looks like Craig Stykes is back in the lead as the live time scoring is concerned. I don't think that's much of a surprise to anybody. I mean, after the 63 lagged out of the session there, Craig took command of this race, and he never really looked back. Now, fun fact, look behind Craig. Well, there's the 63 again. Now multiple laps down due to his internet connectivity issues. But he is back in the session. Actually, ooh, man, that's rough. Johnny Avila, 21 laps down in this session. That is, I would say, unfortunately, an insurmountable gap. We're not going to get 21 cautions. Actually, if you look at it this way, there's a car ahead of him 7 laps down. Then there's 3 cars ahead of him 1 lap down. So technically, he would need upwards of 30 cautions, and that's just not going to happen. But Johnny Vila being good in points, I'd say he's just out here to help his team out and, turn some laps, have a good time at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to help your teammates out. I mean, put all the practice in. You might as well come out, hang out, and maybe even push a teammate that hasn't been here all season to a win. It'd be great to see Craig Stykes back to victory lane.
It's always great to see a new winner, and especially when it comes at the hands of teamwork and everybody working together and trying to support their teammates. That's always great to see. And right now, it's really looking like it might shake out that way for Craig Stykes in that 57. As Johnny Vila really has, I think, joined for that purpose. I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence. He gets back in this session. He immediately finds his way up to his teammate and says, all right, I'm going to bump draft you down the backstretch. We're going to make this work, and we're going to pull away from these guys. So that is pretty much what he's doing, and Will Worsler has found his way. He's currently in second. He's found his way up to the 63 and the 57 as well. So he is currently running P2. Will, of course, a driver who really looked like he was going to get a win last week. I mean, he dominated so much of that race last week, and then a late race caution threw everything into the blender, shook it up, and said, well, it is now everybody's game. Anybody who's on the lead lap has a chance at this. And while he got a good finish, a really good finish, it was not the win he was after. Do you think that makes him a little bit more hungry tonight?
Absolutely. You want a win going into the playoffs. You want those bonus points. And if I'm Will Worsler and I had the season that I had last year, and I came into this season and have struggled the way he has, I'm taking any win I can get it. I know he was definitely hungry. He really wanted one last week. And he's going to do everything in his power to try to win one tonight. Absolutely.
And, of course, you got Tyler Seville behind him. Tyler Seville, is he a driver who maybe he's like, all right, I got some wins this season. I've been doing really good. Does he maybe push the boss man up front? Does he set aside his own, obviously winning desire to say, all right, we're going to get the boss man up there, we're going to get the lead. Kind of, shades of DEI, Dale Earnhardt pushing Junior and Michael Waltrip up front. You think we're going to see something like that out of Will Wurzler Racing?
I absolutely think that's definitely a possibility. I think Tyler, we've seen him win a couple races this season. I wouldn't rule that out. Tyler pushing Will to the win.
Definitely could happen. Again, teamwork is so important here, and right now, Will Wurzler Racing is just on cloud 9 in that regard. And looking back through the scoring and timing, I'm noticing Scott Eckrich. I think, I said after this first round of green flag stops, that was go time. That's when these drivers are going to say, all right, it's been green long enough to get a stop in. I don't think we're going to see that many cautions. Now it's go time. Eckrich has made his way all the way up into P7. He was riding around back there in 24th, 23rd for the longest time. Now he's inside the top 10. So definitely seems like a few of these drivers are starting to get a little bit more aggressive as you ride on board with the number 70. And this camera always gives you a good perspective, to the viewers at home. And we talk about it every time we go to these tracks, but there's good reason for it. The visibility is just awful. When you're in the cockpit of these cars and you're right behind these really tall race cars, all you can see is the bumper, the deck lid, and the windshield of the car in front of you. Sometimes, Jordan, you're even looking through the rear windshield of the car in front of you to see what's going on because you can't see around them. And then you add on the fact that we're racing at night under the lights, which further reduces visibility, and that just makes it all the more difficult.
Yeah, this gyro cam going on the backstretch on Scott Eckrich right now, this is a really good view. Obviously, you're more centered in the car than he is, but this is exactly what he's seeing. You can't see anywhere past the 27 in front of you. You can see the yellow line to your left. You can see a little bit out to the right-hand side, but that's it. You're going off that orange bumper that's right in front of you. And as you can see, even if you try to look through the windshield of the car in front of you, you almost can't because the spoiler's in the way. I know they put a little bit of a glass spoiler or a plexiglass spoiler on the top, but in iRacing, you can't see through it. It's not something you can do. It's a lot of guesswork. When I try to run these tracks, you find the logo on the back bumper and you center up on it and you hope for the best.
And circling back to blinking out of the session, I think that kind of is another reason that blinking is so dangerous, especially at these plate tracks, because sometimes when a car blinks, as well as I do, Jordan, it'll cause tire smoke. They'll blink out and you'll see a plume of smoke. Now, when you're, let's say, Scott Eckrich, you're running 7th place, all you can see is the bumper of the car in front of you, and then suddenly you see a plume of smoke in front of you. You don't know if that's a car actually wrecking and spinning out, or if it's somebody blinking out of the session and there's actually no danger. But you're going to react like there's a wreck either way, because if you don't, you might get collected. So you're going to try to swerve out of the way, you're going to lift off the throttle, and that in and of itself can cause an accordion effect, which leads to a wreck that maybe wouldn't even happen if somebody blinked out. So that's kind of another reason that drivers like Grant Brown, when they have those issues, they're told they have to go to the back, because it is a huge danger. Absolutely.
The last thing you want is someone mid-pack slamming on the brakes because they think a wreck's happening, and that's the wreck that's happening, is them slamming on the brakes. And it's just not a recipe you want to see happen, and I'm glad that Grant Brown did fall to the back when he was asked to. That way we avoid all these issues, and obviously Johnny Avila, his connection seems to have cleaned up, and Troy Haight has as well. So it's definitely something we got to keep an eye on. But these drivers also are very good at self-policing themselves.
Absolutely, they are. And I'm looking at the scoring and timing, and Grant Brown, speaking of him, he's not really managed to recover after he fell back due to that blink out. He's currently running P20, and for a driver who's on the bubble, I think you said he had an 18-point advantage. If the driver that was 18 points behind him finishes 18 positions ahead of him, which is more than possible considering he's in 20th, that puts him out of the show. So I think the number 15 is kind of on the hot seat right now. He's got to scramble.
Absolutely, he does. I'd be trying to get in front of those two cars very quickly. That would force the 45 of John Eckert basically to win. As long as Grant Brown can be 18th, even 17th would probably be a happier place for me. He'd be in on points. Now, with that being said, if the 45 of John Eckert does win and Alan Young leapfrogs Grant Brown in points, that's going to knock Brown out, or that's going to knock Alan Young out. So just because John Eckert wins, it can shake everything up.
It absolutely can. Just because some drivers are locked in does not mean everybody has that comfort, and there are drivers who are really racing for their playoff lives at this point. And you come to a track like this, 63. Johnny Avila getting a little bit squirrely there, and that's something we haven't really talked about, Jordan. we bump draft a lot at these tracks, but it's not an easy task. As easy as these drivers make it look, if you're misaligned just a little bit, or if the driver behind you is not prepared for it and ready to make those movements on the wheel to keep their car steady, one wrong bump draft, and that could be the end of several drivers' nights.
Yeah, absolutely it can. I mean, it is a simulator. It is basically just a overglorified video game. We like to call it a simulator, but the noses on these cars are not square. They're pointed. These guys are running Chevys right now, as you see the nose on Johnny Avilia's car. That point's realistic. When you get on the bumper, you've got to push on the center of that point. And if you aren't pushing on the center of that point, you get to one side or the other, it's going to start dancing the car in front of you left to right. And that's when you can start spinning someone out without even trying to.
Yeah, very easy mistake to make, and these bumper cams really showing exactly how easy of a mistake that would be. I mean, they are so close in proximity, and it's so hard to stay aligned. I mean, even if you're trying to hug that yellow line, you're always going to be weaving just a little bit, up and down the track. You can see Johnny in that number 63. He's going up, he's going down, and it's just so easy to do when you have very little feedback in the wheel on these tracks. I mean, again, it's just so floaty on that feedback, very little resistance. So you're never going to be completely stable. And of course, even if you were completely stable on the wheel, the aero of the cars ahead of you and behind you can drag you around and pull you up and down the track pretty much against your will. So a lot of, I would say, dynamics at play when it comes to how these drivers interact with each other on this track.
Absolutely there is. As we see again, I'm gonna go back to Johnny Avilia's front bumper. Different manufacturers, Avila, sorry, thank you. Different manufacturers are shaped a little bit differently. The Toyotas still have a little bit of a point like the Chevys do, but the Fords are much more rounded, much more flat. They honestly push a little bit better. A couple seasons ago, I was running a Toyota and was having that issue, switched to Ford beginning of this season, and that's one thing I found. The Fords, as we see here on the multicam, push a lot better because they're a lot flatter. They line up with the bumpers better, and it's just a much more even match.
Yeah, that is a good point. I mean, those Chevrolets are a little bit more pointed, and that was kind of a problem in real life for the longest time. Especially, we saw Chase Elliott have a lot of issues with bump drafting over the years because of the pointed Chevrolet front end. And in real life, I think they kind of wound up kind of flattening out the Chevy front end a little bit to try and reduce that. But of course, in the simulator, it's still kind of pointed, and it's not quite like it is currently in real life. So very difficult thing to do, but these drivers handling it like absolute champions. And Johnny Avila doing a fantastic job pushing his teammate, working with him from many laps down to try and get him out and away. And just Will Worcester Racing as a whole. I mean, it's right now it seems like it's Michael Larch and Adam Jersky versus WWR. I mean, these drivers, fourth and fifth, they have a chance. You mentioned, you can come back from 4 or 5 car lengths back if you get a good run and you're working, in tandem. But it's going to be a tall order. I mean, you get this many teammates in a line, and things suddenly get a lot more difficult.
Yeah, absolutely it does. Again, second week in a row, shout out to Michael Larch, running fourth right now. He's been up here almost the entire race. It's really good to see different faces on tracks like this be able to run up front. You see Michael Larch looking back through, Mark Cohn's running 8th right now. John Eckert's currently 9th. There's a couple different faces that we're seeing over the last couple weeks as we get to different style tracks. We had Michigan last week. I believe the week before that we were at Watkins Glen, and now Daytona. 3 insanely different tracks, and we've seen different names running in the top 10.
Yeah, it's been a lot of different names that we've seen running up front, and a lot of variety, I would say, in the competition, which is always great to see as we continue to watch these leaders kind of run around and kind of stay single file for the time being. But man, I think things are going to heat up pretty quickly here. I mean, we got 25 laps to go, which sounds like a lot, but of course, that goes by pretty quick here at the World Center of Racing. 25 laps is not much, especially when you consider pretty soon, I would say with roughly, I'm not sure exactly when they're going to pit, but I'd say with roughly 10 to go, you're going to see a lot of these drivers come down for their final pit stop. It's likely going to be a splash and go. And at that point, there's no need to save. There's no need to be conservative. There's no need to play it safe and make sure that you're, driving safe. It's all about getting to the front, getting that checkered flag, and doing everything you can to win. And that is going to be pretty wild because really, Jordan, we haven't had the field really separate that much. A lot of times at these plate tracks, you'll see 2, 3 packs forming up. Really, we've only got 2 packs forming, and the second pack is relatively small. The first pack goes all the way back to 14th position. So 14 cars that up until this next green flag stop are going to be in contention for this thing after almost 60 laps.
Absolutely. I just saw something interesting with the 63 and the 57 there for about a lap. They started to gap the 29 of Will Wurzler in front of them just a little bit. I wonder if they were seeing what they had later on in the event. I know that's one big thing. You want to see how far out you can get. If you can get out as far as they did with coming to the white flag, you might set yourself up for a great finish, especially with the 63 pushing you. He doesn't have anything to gain. He can just push. You know he's not going to try to make a pass on you. He's going to push the rest of the night.
Absolutely, and that is a huge, huge help to whoever he is pushing. And I don't think Johnny is going to be too particular about which teammate he helps, as long as he's helping, his teammates. And so, really, anybody that can get out front, the helping hand of that 63, as long as they're on his team, of course. But also, he's playing a little bit of defense. I mean, if, let's say, Michael Larch or Adam Jersky get up front, well, that 63, he's going to be the blocker. He can make more risky moves and more risky blocks and fall out of line, just like he did right there, because if he falls back, then he doesn't really lose anything. So Avila going to the high line now, and he is going to drop back a ways. I'm not sure what the play is there, possibly due to the upcoming pit sequence. Now we got Woody Mahan, among others, making their way down pit road. A little bit earlier than I expected for the second round of stops, but they can make it to the end from here.
They can make it to the end. If you're far enough back, you got to try something, and pitting early might be the move to try to make. It gets you on pit road. If you can get on and off nice and clean, you might be able to gain a little bit of time back, and then you don't got to stop later on. You can keep pedal to the metal the rest of the way, and you might end up gaining 5 or 6 spots. Heck, you might even catch a lead pack again.
Yeah, that is a firm possibility. So kind of opening up a lot of doors when they pit so early on there, for sure. And some of these other drivers, they might stay out a little bit longer because, again, I mean, they pit, a lot of these guys didn't pit until lap 38, 39. They can afford to stay out for quite some time. So a lot of opportunities, a lot of different choices for these drivers to make. Again, kind of a matter of preference a little bit when it comes to when you pit. And these guys, well, they got a lot of room to work with. Is the number 29, Will Wurzler. He has moved up into the second spot. In fact, he was in second the entire time, but he was the third car in line as Johnny Avila was laps down, their second car in line. Now that Avila has dropped towards the back of the pack, as you can see him right there in the corner of your screen, that is going to go ahead and put Will Wurzler in second. He is currently pushing that number 57, but unlike Johnny Avila in that 63, I don't think Wurzler is going to be quite as generous with the bump drafting or quite as much of a team player, because we already kind of talked about it, but Will wants to get a win. He's had such a great season. He has tasted
Trouble
that
down the
checkered
backstretch.
flag. And there's the incident right there. No caution yet as the 69, Adam Jersky, he's going to hold on to it. And as is Adam Young, barely sliding back onto the track to safety. We had one car sliding at a huge angle down towards the inside wall. Not quite sure what came of him, but we stay green.
That's really shocking because, like you said, I think it was the 27 that Drew Carroll was aimed hard towards the infield, and we see the 69 Adam Jersky hot onto pit road. My guess would be that car must be as we have a big wreck again.
And that is going to have to be yellow flag. We got the number 14, AJ Digby, with a hard hit, as well as the 85. I believe, is that Eckert in the 45? I can't quite tell who that was. Somebody's missing a front end. And yeah, many, many cars involved in this second incident. I got to wonder if the field being shuffled up with everybody coming down pit road, slowing down. Maybe this was the cause. But here we go, taking a look at our 3Y TV replay of the first incident. 27 looks like he got a bad push, and it sent him down into a few other cars. And he was able to slide to a stop before hitting the wall, so his car should be all right. You can see him getting back on track right there. And then not long after this, the second incident is going to occur, and it's going to be right in this pack here. So you can see there is the number 85, and he is kind of between the number 40. Now, I don't think that was AJ Digby involved. I'm sorry about that. I didn't correct there. But a hard hit into the outside wall.
Yeah, it looks like the 27 moved back up on the track. It's kind of right in front of this entire pack as Looked like it was either the 40 or the 41 car was trying to move up to miss the slowing 27 and then put the 85 in the wall, and then it just chain reaction ensued from there. It looks like the 85, I believe it's either the 40 or the 41. Pardon me, because I know they all kind of look exactly the same. And then who else got involved? It looks like the 04 of Mark Myers and the 37 of Corey Benton, I think, were the cars involved. And then someone came in really late there and really hit someone hard.
Yeah, he just kind of ping-ponged off both of them there. That was a bad angle, and that's front-end damage as well, which never want to have front-end damage, especially at a plate track. So as we go on board here, go to the rear bumper cam, just a little tap from the 85, and that was enough to send him around into the outside wall, nearly up and over. As he goes careening down towards the apron, cars wrecking behind him. Absolute chaos. Of course, this, this is kind of what you were talking about earlier, Jordan. Sometimes pitting early can be a liability, and that just happened for a lot of drivers.
Yeah, it did. The 84 Woody Mahan, one of the ones I know pitted earlier, he now has to take a wave around. I mean, that's not a position you want to be in. You don't want to take a wave around while everyone else has got the pit and then going to go right back by you. You want to be able to stay out and assume that position. And unfortunately, the 84 is going to have to go to the rear. I believe the 17 is going to have to go to the rear. I'm trying to look on who else might be riding around out there as well. There's a couple cars that pit. I think there's about 4 or 5 cars that pitted that now have to go to the rear because they have to take the wave around, and it just makes your night that much harder.
Yeah, it does not make it easy, that's for sure. Will Worsler nearly beat the 57 off of pit road. In fact, for a minute, I thought he did because he was ahead of him right as they kind of blended onto the apron. But no, the 57 did beat the number 29 out of pit road, so Will Worsler is going to be starting second. He won't be the control car. I was going to say he's going to start on the outside, but that's not necessarily true. Of course, leader has lane choice. He can go top or bottom, and that's kind of an interesting question now, Jordan. We haven't had a restart up until now, but which lane do you think is going to be preferred for the control car? You think they want to go top or bottom?
It all depends on who's behind you. It doesn't matter which lane you start in as long as the person behind you is the person who's going to push you. If I'm Will Worsler and I have someone, say, like Michael Krobach, I don't want to start right behind Michael Krobach because he's not going to push me. Whereas if I have someone, say, like not Greg Evans, but Craig Stykes, that person's going to push me. I'm going to go with Craig Stykes. So I'm going to line my car up wherever Craig's going to be on the outside.
Absolutely, I would have to agree with that as they continue to make their pace laps. Just an update, Brian Yazik, driver of the number 55, he has had a internet problem and he has been disconnected from the session. We will let you know if he gets back into the session. Tim Knott has also manually disconnected. I do believe he was involved in that pile up there that caused this caution. So probably too much damage to continue on. And also, I would say at this point, if you have a lot of damage, there's not much of a purpose in going back out there. We're on lap 65. By the time we go green, it's going to be 15, 14 laps to go. And that's just not enough time to repair a potential engine swap or whatever else major repairs you may have. Likely the race would be over before it even let you back on the track. So that's kind of why we're seeing Tim Knott disconnect. And that's unfortunate. Not the time in the race you want to have those incidents because now he's not really going to be able to get back out there and try to salvage any points from the other cars that have DNF'd. But, that's plate racing, man. It is so chaotic and so crazy. You never really know what's going to happen. And speaking of not knowing what's going to happen, look at this. Greg Evans. He is on the outside of row 2. This is really the furthest up the grid he's been all night in that, I would say, really gorgeous paint scheme. I love that purple and teal. But this is the furthest up the grid he's been all night. And as we said, this is go time. There's no time to play around. And Greg, he's made no secret that he is really frustrated with the way the last few races have gone. I mean, this really last half of the season has not gone the way he wanted it to go, especially as the defending champ. I think his expectations have been set a little bit higher than how he's been performing. He's been doing really well, but Greg's just one of those drivers. He wants to be winning every race. Well, now he sees the leader in his windshield. He sees that checkered flag. He's going to have to be aggressive as the pace car pulls off. And our leader, John Eckert, who actually stayed out, and alongside Kevin Stone, is going to get a huge run. And the outside kind of stalls out. Greg Evans is all by his lonesome.
That he is. And playoff implications right here. John Eckert stayed out. He's currently P1. That's where he needs to be. That's his golden ticket into the playoffs. That's the easiest way for him to do it is to win. He wins, he's in. He's made every race. He wins this race tonight. He gets his automatic berth into the playoffs, and he's going to have bonus points for winning.
Absolutely right. But my question is, when did John Eckert last pit? Was he one of the ones that pitted before this caution came out and he somehow found his way towards the front? Or has he not made his second stop? Because if he hasn't made a second stop, it would be really, really close on fuel. Okay, so he last pitted on lap 39. That puts him on a fuel bubble, Jordan. I mean, it's possible for him to make it with the pace laps, I would say, but definitely not if he's leading the race. He'd have to be drafting with somebody, I would think.
No, if I'm Eckert right now, I am bailing in the back. I'm trying to get the 17 in front of me. I'm trying to do something to get behind the 17, but not lose all that track position, because I got to save as much fuel as I possibly can. We saw it in the duels at the beginning of the season that fuel mileage, you can do 40 laps, but to be able to do 40 laps, you got to back off a lot. They were running, the group that did it was running almost 20, 30 miles an hour or less. We see trouble in turn 3 again.
Oh man, so we're having more issues on the track, and I think this is what we expected. Things starting to get a little bit heated up as the laps wound down, and on the top of your 3-wide TV multicam, I believe that is the number 7 machine. He's kind of all by himself, might have had a single car incident, maybe got a bad bump, not entirely sure what happened. But right now, look at this. Stikes for the lead is going to get around the number 45, and Will Worsler getting a little bit squirrely, a little bit down towards the door of that 45, but honestly, this is probably the best thing for Eckert. If he can just get that 57 or anybody else to dive down in front of him and give him... Oh, there we go! On the back stretch, it is the... Well, I was going to say it's the big one, but it's 2 cars. Will Worsler sliding through the grass. Caution flag has flown. No damage to that 29 machine for Will Worsler. Not sure about the other cars. They are still wrecking down into turn 3. I think that might honestly be unrelated. Not entirely sure. But yeah, the 45 was one of the cars that got a little bit of contact from that. And he does have some damage, but this does make him safer on fuel. So we'll have to see how that plays out, where he lines up. But you can see Worsler just got a bit of a shove there, sliding down through the grass. And what a save! Does a 360 spin down into the grass and immediately straightens that bad boy out. As Eckert got a lot more damage than I was expecting. He came up into 3 and 4, shades of Elliott Sadler, and got into a few cars there pretty hard. I got to wonder how much that damage is going to hold him back.
Yeah, I'd say that damage might do him in. Unfortunately, another second wreck happened, and I don't think if it was for that second wreck, those guys probably would have moved up, and he would have had a little bit of room to be able to slide back in, and probably would have been all right had the caution come out. But since they were all wrecking, they were all scattered to begin with, he just kind of slid into the secondary wreck, and that was the end of that. And
kind of a silent victim to all that, Woody Mahan. Woody Mahan in the 84 got his entire front end ripped off. As we go on board with, I believe this is Digby. I could be wrong. It is Digby. We've confirmed that. And he somehow he Days of Thunder this, just drove right through all of it. Getting on the team radio, probably saying, I'm through it, Harry, because he went right around it. And that's a lot of track position gain, Jordan.
That is a lot of track position gain. That's really good heads-up driving right there from the 14 as we see Woody Mahan, man. Every wreck, every week, somehow, some way, the driver of the 84 car finds his way in it, usually not of his own doing. He just falls victim almost every single week. I think if there was a hard luck award of the season, it's going to go to the 84.
Yeah, if he didn't have bad luck, I don't think Woody Mahan would have any luck at all, and it's such a shame because he's had so many good runs going this year, and you know he's got the talent, and it gets so frustrating as a driver when you know you've got the ability, you know you've got the car, but every week something happens that takes you out of it, and it's never your fault. It's just something you get caught up in, and eventually you start to question yourself. You think, well, I mean, how many wrecks can I get involved in where it wasn't my fault? Maybe I'm just putting myself in the wrong place at the wrong time. Maybe there's something I'm doing wrong, and it's not a good way to think. As a driver, you got to think, no, I'm doing everything right. I just got to keep trying. But it's easy to get discouraged, and that can, of course, kind of lead to I would say reduced performance going forward. That's why they talk about momentum and how important momentum is. And Woody Mahan, unfortunately, his momentum has been going in the wrong direction. But here's hoping for a comeback. I mean, like I said, very talented driver. I mean, every bad luck streak's got to end eventually.
Yeah, it's got to end at some point. Usually when they end at a really high note. So hopefully by the end of the year, Woody Mahan can find that high note and get a good, solid finish, maybe even a win. One of these tracks coming up in the playoffs.
Absolutely. Right now, I'm looking at our scoring and timing, and the leader still being scored is Craig Stites. So Craig continuing his pretty much dominant performance. I can't imagine we're going to have too many cars come down pit road. I think everybody's good on fuel. And the drivers who did come down pit road, I mean, those were the ones that were like right on the bubble of fuel or had damage they needed to repair. But when it comes to the front runners, the guys who've already pitted, there's really no reason to come back down. I mean, getting 4 fresh good years, getting topped off on fuel, there's no inherent advantage to that. Now, here's an interesting situation, Jordan. Look at the lead car, and let me see if you're seeing what I'm seeing, because that number 72, who will be the control car, or not the control car, I'm sorry, he's starting row 1, but the 57 is the control car. Michael Krobach starting P2 has a lot of damage. That rear end is beat, and that is going to affect his aero in major, major ways. That's got to be a little scary for anybody trapped on the bottom lane behind him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it might not look like a lot on your screen. Obviously, you can see it is crinkled in, and you would think that back there it's not going to make a difference. That is like a parachute on the back of that 72 car. The only saving grace that he's going to have is if the 17 can get right on his bumper and continue to push him, that's the only thing that's going to keep them going. If they get any half a car length at all in between those two cars, that's when the parachute coming out and you're going to the back. Interesting tidbit, the 57 is the control car, like we mentioned on the last restart. He's up in front of the 11. They're teammates or satellite teammates. So that's the play to make. You want to get in front of someone that's going to push you, and you don't want the 11 to have to push the 72, and then you're risking his teammate.
It absolutely is exactly like that. Another thing I'm noticing here, Alan Young and Grant Brown, 2 drivers on the bubble, they've kind of snuck their way up into row 3 and 4. So drivers on the bubble making their way towards the front of the field, and John Eckert, who really, in all reality, needs to win this race. He's a little bit further back, but the pace truck making that hard left turn. The control car is away with a huge shove from his teammate, his satellite teammate, Tyler Seville. And just as we predicted, Jordan, there, inside row, spinning down to the inside. Stone headed towards the pits. I think he might have been the only one involved in that. And it looks like the pace car's coming back out, but no, the pace car's parking. So we're still green. 57 car maintaining his heartbreaking incident for Stone to be kind of caught up in that right on the restart. I gotta wonder, was that maybe due to the checkup with the damage on that 72?
Absolutely could have been. I'd have to see a replay to see exactly what happened there, but you gotta wonder, was it one of the playoff bubble drivers right behind him? I think either the 15 or the 24 started right behind him. It looks like the 15 started right behind him, as we see on that Free Light TV multicam, and it looks like he definitely missed a gear and just dove into the infield to try to minimize the damage at all possible. Great job of the 15 of Grant Brown, missing him or at least minimizing the damage that was inevitable.
Yeah, if Grant Brown would have hit him, that would have been a way bigger incident than it was. So that was some great heads-up driving by the number 15 to make that dodge. And that pretty much kept him up there in 4th, which is a really good position to be. I mean, right now he's putting himself in contention to try to make a move for the win. But all of these drivers are going to have to try to overcome the teamwork that is going to come from the number 11 and the number 57. These guys are going to be working together, bump drafting as best they can, at least for a few more laps. And look at this, the number 72, Michael Krobach, another driver who had a pretty good run last week. Even with that damage to the rear end of the car, that number 15 is pushing him towards the front.
They're, again, satellite teammates. They might be in different manufacturers, but Loud Pedal Motorsports and Graphics LC Motorsports are satellite teammates as well. And Grant Brown's doing everything he can to push the 72. That's his only hope. I mean, he at this point, he's pretty well safe. The only threat he really had as we were going was the 45 of Eckert, who was caught in that wreck and is currently running 15th. So all Grant Brown has to do really at this point is finish. But at the same token, you want bonus points. If Grant Brown gets up there and leads a lap or can even pull out a win, you're going to gain bonus points on your competitors going into the playoffs. And that's going to make a big, as we see, a big wiggle from the 72 getting pushed by the 15 there.
That was a huge moment right there. He got very, very loose. As you go to our 3-wide TV multicam on the top of your screen, that's what happened to the 72. As right there, you can see real close to Will Wursler. And that's where the wiggle kind of comes in. I think he gets a shot right here. Down to the bottom of the track, 27 in front of the 29 there. Bottom of your 3-wide TV multicam. That's the leader. That's from his rear bumper looking back. Tyler Seville pushing his teammate for the time being. But I don't know. What do you think, Jordan? When does the teamwork start to fade away and the drivers start to get a little bit more greedy?
We're coming up on it at any point in time. I mean, a lot of these guys haven't won races this season. Think back, we've only had a handful of winners, and we're looking through the top 5 right now. Craig Stykes hasn't won. He hasn't run very many races this season, but he hasn't won a race in the season. Tyler Seville, he's won a couple. Alan Young hasn't won one. He would love a win heading into the playoffs. Michael Krobach's only led 3 laps all season long. He'd love to sneak out a win tonight. Grant Brown, again, as we said, he would love to pick up a win, get playoff momentum as well.
Absolutely. We are at 5 to go. Top of your screen, still following Will Wurzler. He's got the 63 behind him. Again, a satellite teammate, kind of trying to help him out. And, you know, it's not over. Will Wurzler, he's further back. He's in 8th. He's 1 second back. But he's got cars ahead of to kind of get the draft and kind of leapfrog off of. And with the help of his teammate pushing him, he might get back up there before this is said and done. We're going to cross the line for 4 to go. And that's enough time, I would say, to make something happen if they play their cards right. And it looks like Avila is actually heading down pit road, so goodbye to the advantage that Wurzler had. Wurzler now pretty much fending for himself as he is at the tail end of the lead pack now. The number 63 Avila was able to get him to the lead pack, and we'll see if that is enough as we go on board with Tyler Seville right behind the leader. Again, just so little visibility, and of course the sun has completely gone down. It is pitch black save for the giant spotlights we have. We got lap traffic up ahead, diving down beneath the double yellow line. He's going to steer clear for the leaders, and I'm sure that's what they want to see. Alan Young in 3rd place. He's a driver who's, of course, going to be hungry for a win. Right there on the playoff bubble, wanting to get that 24 car to victory lane, knowing that Daytona is a great opportunity to do it. If he wants to make something happen, he's going to have to do it soon as top of your screen. Look at that. There goes Will Wurzler trying to make a move on the high side. That's going to be tough because right now, I don't think he's going to get much help up there. I don't think you're going to see too many cars go too wide and say, all right, we'll win the draft and we'll try to get something built up, because a lot of these drivers are trying to fend for themselves down on the bottom.
Absolutely. Just looking through who we have here, we obviously have two of the Will Wurzler cars up front, Craig Stykes and Tyler Seville. Alan Young's kind of an independent out there sitting P3, and then you look from 4th, 5th, and 6th, it's Graphics LC and LPM, and then another independent of Mark Myers at the 04, and then Will Wurzler. So if Wurzler could get up to the front, it'd be a 3-on-3 battle, but right now it's 3-on-2 and Alan Young.
3-on-2 and Alan Young. You're absolutely right. Alan Young, he's one of the drivers up there that just doesn't really have the team help that these other guys have. He's playing for himself. You know, he is the freelance driver up here just trying to get this win. So it's going to be tough, but man, he is holding on strong into 3rd, and Will Wurzler still trying to make something happen on the high line because the car ahead of him, you know, he's doing a great job. Myers in that 04 car is doing a fantastic job holding to that bottom and not opening the door for Will to try and make a move. That's why Will's kind of forced to move up high as we round to 3 and 4 for the penultimate time. We're going to be coming to the white flag this time, and this is it. This is where you're going to have to start building up that charge, start drafting with whoever you're going to draft with if you're going to make something happen. And we see, there we go. I believe that is Krobach, who moved up to the top lane for just a moment to see if anybody would come with him, and nobody did. And I mean, that's a little surprising because we are on the last lap. There goes the 24, looking high on the number 11. Falling back a bit. This might be the strategy, Jordan. Fall back a bit and get a run on the backstretch.
That's absolutely the strategy. You got to fall back. You got to get the line moving as we see them all start to move up on the outside. That's exactly what they're trying to do. Now they're going to move down to the bottom. They're going to hang the 24 out to dry. I don't know if I would have done that. I would have pushed the 24 as far as I possibly can. I know he's racing Grant Brown for the last playoff spot, but it doesn't matter at this point. You've got to try to do whatever you can to win the race, and it looks like that would have been the move.
It would have been the move indeed. We've got Stykes out front. We got the number 11 looking high, but it's not going to be enough as they come through the tribal to the start-finish line. Craig Stykes is going to get the win here at Daytona. With his teammate Tyler Seville finishing 2nd. Michael Krobach 3rd. Playoff bubble driver Grant Brown with an impressive 4th place finish. Running out your top 5 is going to be Drew Carroll, who was actually involved in an incident not too long ago. So what a comeback by him. But, man, that was a pretty calm finish, I would say, Jordan. I mean, nobody really started getting dicey there. They just kind of said, all right, we're going to wait till the last turn. We're going to see if we can make it happen, and we're going to do what we can do.
Yeah, it was really kind of surprising. I really thought the 72 and the 15 would have gone with the 24 to see if they could have pushed them up to the lead to try to better their position. But there again, you might not want to give the 24 the win because he will get the bonus point instead of Grant Brown going into the playoffs. And every point counts, especially now as we're going to reset going into the playoffs.
Every point does count indeed. And man, oh man, the points picture has changed quite a bit for tonight. I do believe everybody who is going to finish has finished the race, as the winner, Craig Sykes, is going to burn it down with his teammates. You know, you mentioned last week, Jordan, when a WWR car gets the win, you don't just see one car celebrating. You see many, many cars doing donuts across the start-finish line down in the infield. And that's what we're seeing tonight, is these teammates are going to burn their cars to the ground. They don't need these engines next week. We're going to the playoffs. We're going to rebuild these engines. We're going to rebuild the cars. These things are getting scrapped. Just burn it to the ground and have some fun with it. As there's Johnny Avila joining his teammates. I would say, honestly, you want to give Johnny Avila the teammate of the race award. Coming back for 21 laps down just to help his teammates out. Incredible teamwork and just a team player, Johnny Avila. But our final race results, I'll go ahead and take 1 through 10. Jordan Craig Sykes takes the win, right ahead of his teammate, like we mentioned, Tyler Seville, Michael Krobach, Grant Brown, 4th, Drew Carroll, 5th, Mark Myers, P6, Alan Young, P7, Will Worcester, 8th, Thomas George just sneaking inside the top 10 in 9th, and to round out your top 10, Greg Evans in that number 2 machine.
11th will be Scott Eckrich. 12th will be Mark Kahn. John Eckert had a great run going. He's going to finish 13th, just outside the playoff level, I believe. Michael Large again, great run going. He's going to finish in P14. AJ Digby, Twitter verified. AJ Digby finishes 15th. Adam Blattle, welcome back to him, finishes 16th. Woody Mahan, 17th. Corey Benton is going to finish 18th. Jamie Moore, 19th. And Pete Baskins will round up the top 20.
And rounding out the rest of the field, Richard Fletcher, P21. Kevin Stone involved in that late race incident. He is going to go ahead and bring it home, P22. Tim Knott, 23rd. Brian Yazik, 24th after a disconnect. Adam Jersky, 25th. Gordon Digby, 26th. Todd Kirkwood, P27. Johnny Avila, many laps down, but again, teammate of the race definitely goes to him. He's going to finish 28th. Troy Haight, going to finish 29th, never really recovering from that early disconnect. And Jeff Ward rounding out the field in P30. And what a way for Synergy to get their first win as a team, to do it with all that teamwork, to really dominate the race. I mean, that 57, he was the car to beat all night long, and at the end of the day, he drove away with it. We're going to get ready for some interviews with our top 3 once we get them in the waiting room. And we'll have a word with them, see what their thoughts were on this race tonight. I'm curious to see. I thought it was a pretty fun race from a spectator's perspective, but always curious to hear the driver's input for sure. And I'm sure Sykes is going to be absolutely stoked about getting the team's first win, coming out to Daytona, absolutely dominating. While we wait for the drivers to get in the waiting room, we're going to go ahead and throw the mics over to Cole. We're going to go to a short break, and we'll be back in just a moment with our post-race interviews. And we are back to conclude our post-race coverage with some interviews from our top 3 finishers. We're going to go ahead and bring in Michael Krobach, who finished P3. Let's see if we can't bring him in here. Michael Krobach, you had a copy?
I do, Andre. How are you?
Doing good, Michael. 2 third places in a row. Can't complain about podiums. You're carrying a lot of momentum into the playoffs. You seemed like the very steady and consistent driver out there tonight. You were just kind of riding around, not making much noise, but when it came down to it at the end, you were right there to strike.
Andre, I was trying so hard the entire race to get to the front and lead some laps, but you could do absolutely nothing with this aero package. It's so frustrating as a driver. I didn't have a great qualifying run, started around 9th or so, and we've only led 3 laps on the season at Talladega, and I wanted to kind of change that number tonight. And so I tried to make the top work from lap 1, and we had some cars, but we just couldn't get enough to get formed up, and the WWR cars just were ripping up front, and we could do nothing there. So we jumped some spots on the pit cycle and got up to like 11th, and then gained a few more when they wrecked. And then I was kind of thinking big picture about the playoffs, and not wanting to do anything stupid to wreck my teammate or quasi-teammate Grant there. So I kind of rode the line there at the end and tried to make a move with a couple laps to go, but couldn't get nothing going.
Now, you mentioned how hard it was to pass with this aero package, and we did kind of speculate it looked kind of hard to pass up here in the booth. We were watching you guys. What was the experience like trying to carve your way through the field? I mean, what did that entail?
Yeah, it felt a lot different than Talladega. I felt like at Talladega, you could get a lot of runs. You could stall the cars on the bottom out a lot. But here, my foot was matted to the floor so hard that my throttle foot went numb a couple times, and I'm really happy that we had that caution there with, 10 or so to go. Couldn't feel my right foot. I would lift to try to break the bubble. That's kind of what you had to do to get cars formed up. You had to break the bubble. I'd lift to get the cars behind me and get a little bit of a run. But then if you didn't have enough guys doing that in the same lane, you wouldn't go anywhere. So it was all about just kind of timing your moves and seeing if a lane had momentum. But it was like my foot was through the floorboard, and that's just really tough as a driver.
Absolutely. Now, my final question is, we noticed a little bit of damage to the rear end of your 72 machine there, and it looked like it wasn't holding you back that much. Did that damage play into the race at all?
I think it might have just a little bit. Like, we pitted there just to check it out. Brian said I had a fair bit of damage right before his internet dropped out. That sucks for him. We pitted. It only had like 12 seconds of damage, and so we fixed all we could. I think it might have slowed it down a little bit. We didn't have nose damage, but just not enough to break the bubble. So, riding there in 4th and 5th, I was kind of happy where I was at. I think we're on 7 straight top 10 finishes, which leads the series. So I'm really proud of that. Kind of turning the season around. But didn't want to wreck the car. Happy where I was. Wanted to win. Wanted to jump a couple guys. Kind of did that and got here on the podium. So all in all, a good day.
Absolutely a great day. Continuing your top 10 streak and another podium. Just a fantastic points night as well. Do you have anybody you'd like to thank or shout out for your performance?
Yeah, for sure. Got to thank the whole Loud Pedal Motorsports and Graphics LC Alliance team. We all worked well together with our pit stops and making up time and trying to get the draft rolling. Hate that Brian had a mechanical failure tonight. You got to thank Clipping That Apex. We might just have to run this paint scheme for the rest of the year because we keep finishing in the top 5 with it. I think that's 3 top 5s and 4 starts with this paint scheme, so we're going to keep rolling with this. Clipping That Apex, Thumbs Up Cancer Down, HPP Simulation, Sim Racing Merch, Spotlights by Midwest Simulation, Post Venom, Sim Racing App, CJ Automotive, Amsoy by Adam Blattle. Adam was in the race tonight, so good to see him back. The Mahan Speed Laboratories, Flash and Go Graphics, and MC Squared Editing Services. Got to plug my own company too that does all the write-ups for the races.
Absolutely. Well, again, congratulations on your podium. Hopefully we're talking to you next week under similar circumstances at the beginning of the playoffs.
Awesome. Looking forward to Darlington. Love that track.
That was your 3rd place finisher, Michael Krobach, out of the booth. And now Jordan's going to have a word with our 2nd place finisher, Tyler Seville.
Tyler Seville, P2 on the night. What a run for Will Wurzel Racing again tonight.
Yeah, it's really something. And combine that with Synergy Esports, our satellite team, everything worked out pretty well.
Worked out well, it did. You guys controlled the majority of the race. Talk about the closing laps when Will got shipped down the backstretch.
Yeah, that was crazy. I couldn't see what happened. I was a few lanes behind, and then all of a sudden I saw everything break loose and cars going sideways. And thankfully I was just able to make it through there. I saw he rebounded pretty well for a top 10, so that's a benefit.
Yeah, he definitely rebounded well for a top 10 indeed. Tell us about the closing laps as well, trying to push your teammate to the win. Did you think about stepping out at any point in time?
I was kind of the mindset where I was going to push him until we came out of turn 4 and then see what I had, because I knew Michael Krobach was back there, and I knew he had a couple of teammates behind him, and I knew they had been trying to get that outside lane to work on that last run. So I was content just pushing him until the last corner, and then if I had room to move up, to try to move up. But as soon as Crowbot got to the inside of Alan Narrow in the backstretch, I knew I probably wasn't going to have any momentum to do it. So I pulled out, but just no momentum to get back Craig there at the end.
All in all, still a good run for you tonight as you head into the playoffs, solidly into the playoffs. I can't remember exactly what position you're going to be in, as points still are fluent as we go into the final event here. But do you have anyone you want to thank?
Yeah, I have to thank Arch Telecom. I have to thank all my teammates, and shout out to Doug. I know he has been racing here lately, but he's still involved with the group. And shout out to Synergy Esports. I think Craig Sykes and Johnny Avila, that combo proved potent today until Johnny had his connection issues. It was very likely that they could have been 1-2 for that entire race pretty much. So just thankful for all of them.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations tonight, and good luck as we enter the playoffs next week.
All right, thank you.
That was your second place finisher, Tyler Seville, out of the booth. Incredible team player, I gotta say. I mean, the fact that he didn't even think about jumping out till turn 4, that pretty much tells me he's like, all right, if my teammate gets this win, I'm fine with that. And you love to see it. Racing, it is just one guy in the car, but it's a team sport at its core. So quite incredible. Now we're gonna have a word with our race winner, Craig Stikes. Let's see if we can get him up here. Craig.
Racing up there with a bunch of good guys. I really like Michael. I've raced with him for a while, and he's a good dude. So these guys are racing for championships. So I pretty much just decided I was just going to hold the bottom line. And Tyler, he had plans of trying to win a race, and but I think they stepped out behind him even further and kind of messed up his run. So he ducked back behind me, and that pretty much ruined any chance he had of trying to get me out of turn 4. But with the with everything with the points and all that, I pretty much thought I was going to hold the yellow line, and if they got together and went around the outside, that's just what happened.
I would say that's definitely a logical play, but man, you played it so well all race long, and definitely awesome to see you get the team's first win in such a calm, collected demeanor. I mean, just saying, all right, I'm going to hold the bottom. What happens, happens, and you walk away with a trophy. It's absolutely awesome. Is there anybody you'd like to shout out or thank for your performance?
Yeah. Everybody with WWR really helped me and give me a lot of information where I didn't really do any practicing. My teammate Johnny with Energy, like I said, that's really unfortunate what happened to him. He was fast. Custom Paints and Die Cast, Jordan Berry, for being on the car, and Nikki Warsler, always, she's always in the chat cheering us on, even though I'm not on WWR, she still cheers us on, so I appreciate that, and you guys for the broadcast, and Sam for everything he does, giving us a place to race.
All right, well, Craig, congrats on the win. We're going to let you go celebrate, and hopefully we're talking to you again under similar circumstances, bud.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Thank you, guys.
You have a good night.
You too.
Craig Stykes out of the booth, and with that, that's pretty much going to do it for our post-race coverage. Tell you what, Jordan, what are your closing thoughts on this crazy race here at Daytona?
Crazy race it was. The points battle was up and down all race long. We saw the drivers that came into it in the points stay in, and unfortunately the other two, John Eckert and Troy Haight, had troubles of their own. Troy Haight early on had troubles, and John Eckert running really well at the end, and unfortunately got caught up in a wreck. Didn't really have a chance, unfortunately. But other than that, the race was great, exactly what we expected to see. Couple cautions mixed things up, and I couldn't have asked for anything better.
I'd have to agree with everything. That is going to do it for our post-race coverage. I'm Andre Grambush, joined alongside Jordan Harnish, and of course, producer Carlos Acosta, the man that makes it all happen here on 3 Wide TV. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next week.